The National Archives building in Washington, D.C. held within its walls the ghosts of forgotten histories, secrets whispered on yellowed paper, truths buried beneath layers of bureaucratic dust. For Elias Vance, a seasoned but increasingly disillusioned archivist at the CIA's Historical Review Division, it was a sanctuary and a prison. He spent his days wading through classified documents, piecing together fragments of operations long past, most of which were as mundane as they were meticulously recorded. One sweltering summer afternoon, tucked away in a mislabeled box from the late 1960s, Elias stumbled upon a file marked with an unusual classification stamp he didn't recognize. Nightingale, eyes only. His curiosity piqued. He carefully bypassed the outdated security protocols, a relic of a bygone era, and began to read. The documents detailed a clandestine initiative codenamed Project Nightingale, a joint operation between the CIA and a shadowy scientific division. The objective was contact, not with human adversaries, but with an extraterrestrial intelligence. However, this was no ordinary communication. The Nightingale protocols described attempts to interact with an alien species that did not use language or technology as humanity understood it. Instead, they communicated through a complex bio-resonant frequency, a subtle vibration that could directly influence the human mind. Elias initially dismissed it as Cold War-era pseudoscience, another bizarre attempt to weaponize the unknown. But as he delved deeper into the file, the details became increasingly disturbing and eerily credible. The document spoke of experiments conducted on unwitting subjects, individuals exposed to the Nightingale frequency with terrifying and unpredictable results. Some experienced sudden and uncontrollable psychic abilities, others descended into madness, their minds fractured by alien whispers. The project was seemingly shut down abruptly in the early 1970s, the files buried and forgotten. But something in the final memo sent a chill down Elias's spine. A single ambiguous sentence: Nightingale protocols remain active under revised parameters. A cold dread settled over Elias. Had Project Nightingale truly ended, or was this dangerous alien influence still subtly at play? Woven into the very fabric of American consciousness, a silent symphony of alien thought echoing in the minds of the unsuspecting. Elias couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The words "protocols remain active" echoed in his mind, a persistent low-frequency hum of anxiety. He began to dig deeper, using his archival skills to cross-reference file numbers and unearth related documents that were scattered across different departments, intentionally obscured. His search led him to the audiovisual archives, a cold, climate-controlled vault where the ghosts of the past were stored on magnetic tape. He found a series of reel-to-reel audio logs from Project Nightingale's most intense phase. The labels were nondescript, marked only by dates and subject numbers. Elias requisitioned an old tape player, plugged in a pair of headphones, and pressed play. The first recording was mostly static, but beneath it he could hear the calm, detached voice of a researcher. Then a new sound emerged, a strange, melodic, and deeply unsettling tone. It wasn't music, but it had a structure, a pulsating rhythm that seemed to vibrate in his very bones. This was it, the Nightingale frequency. As he listened, the researcher began to describe the subject's reactions. Subject A is exhibiting signs of distress, claims to be hearing colors and seeing sounds. Vitals are erratic. He switched to another tape. The frequency was slightly different here, more complex. The subject of this experiment was speaking, his voice a frantic whisper. They're showing me things that haven't happened yet. A city on fire, a president I don't recognize. It's too much, make it stop. The recording ended with a blood-curdling scream. He listened for hours, each tape a window to a private hell. He started to feel the effects himself. A dull headache began to throb behind his eyes. The static between recordings seemed to form patterns, whispering his name. He would catch fleeting images in his peripheral vision, strange geometric shapes, flashes of impossible colors. The frequency was leaking through the old headphones, a faint echo of the past, but it was enough to give him a terrifying taste of its power. He wasn't just studying a dead project anymore. He was listening to a live weapon, and its target was the human mind. The more Elias learned about Project Nightingale, the more paranoid he became. He started to see the subtle influence of the bio-resonant frequency everywhere. The sudden shifts in political discourse, the inexplicable trends in popular culture, the almost hypnotic ways certain news narratives took hold. Could these be orchestrated, even subconsciously, by the lingering effects of the Nightingale frequency? He delved into the project's personnel files, trying to track down the scientists and agents involved. Most were deceased or had vanished without a trace, but he found one name that stood out: Dr. Evelyn Reed, a lead researcher on the project who had seemingly left the agency in the early 70s and lived a quiet life as a university professor. Could she hold the key to understanding the project's current status? Elias managed to track down Dr. Reed's address, a modest house nestled in a quiet suburb outside Boston. Driven by a desperate need for answers, he took a leave of absence and flew across the country. Dr. Reed was an elderly woman, her eyes holding a weariness that spoke of long-held secrets. Initially hesitant, she became more forthcoming when Elias presented the original Nightingale files he had unearthed. The memories flooded back, tinged with regret and a profound sense of unease. She confirmed that the Nightingale frequency had the potential for both incredible insight and devastating mental manipulation. The aliens, whoever they were, communicated in a way that bypassed conscious thought, planting ideas and emotions directly into the subconscious. The project's goal was to understand and potentially weaponize this ability. But then, Dr. Reed revealed a terrifying truth. The revised parameters mentioned in the final memo weren't about shutting down the project. They were about making it more subtle, more pervasive. The frequency wasn't being broadcast overtly anymore. Instead, it was being subtly woven into the background noise of modern life, the hum of electronic devices, the static of radio waves, even the infrasound of certain machinery. The goal wasn't to control minds directly, but to subtly nudge them, to create a receptive environment for certain ideas and agendas. And the sleeper agents weren't just the researchers. It was potentially anyone who had been exposed to the frequency during the project's active phase. Their minds subtly programmed, waiting for an unconscious trigger. Elias left Dr. Reed's house with a chilling certainty. Project Nightingale wasn't just active, it was all around him, a silent alien influence shaping the very thoughts and beliefs of the nation. Armed with Dr. Reed's terrifying revelation, Elias returned to Washington, D.C., his paranoia now a cold, hard certainty. He knew he couldn't fight this alone. He needed proof, something tangible that would expose the hidden broadcast. His archivist skills became his weapons in a secret war against an invisible enemy. He hypothesized that if the Nightingale frequency was being piggybacked onto existing signals, it would require a network of transmitters hidden in plain sight. He began cross-referencing old project documents with modern infrastructure maps, looking for patterns, for anomalies. His search led him to a series of seemingly innocuous communication towers built in the late 1970s under a vague federal program for emergency broadcasting. They were located in remote, sparsely populated areas, perfectly positioned to create a web of overlapping coverage across the nation. To confirm his theory, Elias needed to get close to one of these towers. He chose a remote site in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. Under the guise of a historical survey, he drove out to the location, a single rusty tower standing like a sentinel on a lonely peak. Using a sophisticated portable spectrum analyzer he had borrowed from the archive's technical department, he began to scan the frequencies. At first, there was nothing but the normal cacophony of radio, television, and cellular signals. But as he tuned into the lower frequencies, the infrasound spectrum, he found it. A faint but clear signal, pulsing with the same unnatural, melodic rhythm he had heard on the old tapes. It was a ghost, a whisper hidden beneath the noise of civilization. It was the Nightingale frequency, still broadcasting, still weaving its silent influence into the minds of millions. He had found the source. Knowing the signal was real and actively broadcasting, Elias understood the immense danger. He couldn't simply publish his findings. The information would likely be suppressed, and he would become a target. He needed to find a way to expose Project Nightingale to the public in a way that couldn't be easily dismissed. He decided to reach out to a Julian Assange-esque figure, a notorious but respected independent journalist named Marcus Thorne, known for his willingness to publish highly sensitive and controversial information. Using anonymous encrypted channels, Elias contacted Thorne, offering him irrefutable proof of a massive government conspiracy involving alien technology and subliminal mind control. Thorne, initially skeptical, became intrigued by the level of detail and the compelling audio recordings Elias provided, snippets of the Nightingale frequency and the chilling testimonies from the original project tapes. He agreed to meet Elias in a secluded location outside the city. The meeting was tense and clandestine, both men aware of the risks they were taking. Elias laid out his evidence, the original Nightingale files, Dr. Reed's testimony, and the spectral analysis confirming the active broadcast from the communication towers. Thorne listened intently, his skepticism slowly giving way to a grim realization of the potential truth. He agreed to publish the story, but only if Elias could provide even more concrete proof, something that would trigger a widespread investigation and public outcry. Thorne suggested tracking down living subjects of the original Nightingale experiments, individuals who might still be unknowingly affected by the frequency or who might have retained fragmented memories of their experience. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance to truly expose the truth. Elias knew this would be incredibly difficult and dangerous, but he agreed. He had become the messenger, and he had a responsibility to deliver the truth no matter the cost. The search for living subjects of Project Nightingale was like hunting ghosts. Many were homeless or institutionalized, chosen precisely for their anonymity. But Elias, using his archival skills, found a lead. One subject, labeled Subject 17, had a unique physiological response to the frequency, allowing him to track the individual through old medical records that had been mistakenly preserved. His name was Arthur Clarke, and he now lived a quiet, isolated life in a small town in Maine. Elias drove there, finding Arthur in a small, cluttered house, the windows partially covered with aluminum foil. Arthur was an elderly man with darting eyes, filled with a constant fear of something unseen. When Elias tried to talk to him about Project Nightingale, showing him declassified documents, Arthur nearly panicked. He had no memory of the project, but the words frequency and voices triggered a visceral reaction. He told Elias about his bad dreams, vivid, nightmarish visions that had plagued him his entire life. He saw cities with strange architecture, beings without faces, and heard music that he said was trying to tell him something. These were fragments of memory, shards of alien contact lodged in his subconscious. He recounted how he sometimes knew things he shouldn't, the results of sporting events, sudden shifts in the stock market. This knowledge came as sudden, intrusive thoughts he couldn't shake. The frequency had opened something in him, but it had broken his mind, leaving him living in constant paranoia. Elias realized he had found what he was looking for. Arthur was living proof, the human cost of the project. With his consent, Elias recorded their conversation, a trembling, frightened voice recounting a lifetime lived under the influence of an alien whisper. It was the key that could make the world believe. With Arthur's chilling testimony recorded, Elias sent the encrypted audio file to Marcus Thorne. The journalist immediately recognized the explosive potential of the recording. This was the human element, the irrefutable proof of the damage caused by Project Nightingale. Thorne and his team began to work around the clock, preparing a comprehensive expose that would combine Elias's documents, Dr. Reed's background information, and Arthur's haunting story. As Thorne prepared to publish, Elias felt the walls closing in. He noticed unmarked cars parked outside his apartment building and heard strange clicks on his phone line. The agency knew he was a leak, and they were monitoring him. The invisible influence of the Nightingale frequency seemed to intensify around him. He suffered from splitting headaches and vivid, disturbing nightmares, feeling the same mental pressure that had broken Arthur Clarke. He knew he had to disappear. Following a prearranged emergency protocol with Thorne, he wiped his digital footprint, destroyed his personal records, and left his old life behind. He became a ghost, moving from one anonymous motel to another, his only connection to the world a heavily encrypted laptop. He was no longer just an archivist. He was a fugitive, hunted by the very organization he had once served. The weight of the secret he carried was immense, but so was his resolve. He had set in motion a chain of events that could not be stopped. The truth was about to be revealed, and the world would soon be forced to confront the silent alien symphony that had been playing in the background of their lives for decades.
Marcus Thorne's expose on Project Nightingale was a digital firestorm. Released simultaneously across multiple independent news platforms, it presented a meticulously documented case, complete with declassified CIA files, Dr. Reed's corroborating testimony, and the haunting audio of Arthur Clarke. The story spread like wildfire across the internet, bypassing mainstream media outlets that were hesitant to touch such a sensational and potentially damaging revelation. The public reaction was immediate and visceral. Disbelief quickly turned to outrage and fear as people began to recognize the subtle anxieties and unexplained phenomena in their own lives that might be attributed to the Nightingale frequency. Online forums and social media exploded with theories, personal anecdotes, and demands for the government to come clean. Initially, the CIA issued a blanket denial, branding Thorne's report as misinformation and dangerous conspiracy theories. But the sheer volume of evidence and the compelling human element of Arthur Clarke's story made their denials ring hollow. Pressure mounted from both the public and concerned lawmakers for a full investigation. Unseen, unheard, the Nightingale frequency continued its silent broadcast, a constant undercurrent beneath the rising tide of public awareness. But now, people were listening, their minds attuned to the possibility of a hidden influence. The alien symphony was no longer playing in complete secrecy. The broadcast of truth had begun to drown out the whispers of control. The fallout from Thorne's expose was swift and far-reaching. Congressional hearings were convened, demanding answers from former and current CIA officials. Dr. Evelyn Reed, despite her age and initial reluctance, bravely testified about the origins and dangers of Project Nightingale, her words carrying the weight of decades of suppressed guilt. Under intense public scrutiny, the government was forced to declassify more documents related to the project, revealing the extent of the experiments and the potential long-term effects of the bio-resonant frequency. Scientists and neurologists rushed to study the phenomenon, attempting to understand how the alien communication worked and what could be done to counteract its influence. The communication towers identified by Elias became focal points of public protest, with people demanding their immediate shutdown. Conspiracy theories blossomed, some claiming that the frequency was responsible for everything from political polarization to inexplicable mass behaviors. While many of these theories were unfounded, they reflected the deep-seated unease and mistrust that Project Nightingale had unearthed. Elias, still in hiding, watched the unfolding events from the shadows, a sense of grim satisfaction mixed with lingering fear. The truth was out, but the consequences were unpredictable. The subtle influence of the Nightingale frequency had been woven into society for decades. Untangling it would be a monumental task. Moreover, the nature and intentions of the alien species that had initiated the contact remained a mystery. Were they still attempting to subtly guide humanity, or had their plans been disrupted by the exposure of Project Nightingale? The world was awake, but it was facing a future filled with uncertainty. In the aftermath of the Nightingale revelations, the world was irrevocably changed. Trust in government institutions was deeply eroded, and a pervasive sense of unease settled over the global population. Scientists continued to study the bio-resonant frequency, developing countermeasures and attempting to understand its long-term effects. Some individuals, like Arthur Clarke, found a measure of peace in knowing that their lifelong struggles had a tangible cause. Others, potentially unknowingly influenced by the frequency for years, grappled with a newfound uncertainty about their own thoughts and desires. The communication towers, now silent, stood as stark reminders of the clandestine operation. Their fate became a point of contention, some advocating for their complete dismantling, others suggesting they be repurposed for research into the alien communication method. Elias Vance remained in the shadows, his role in exposing Project Nightingale a closely guarded secret. He knew he could never truly return to his old life, but he found a sense of purpose in the knowledge that he had brought a hidden truth to light. He continued to monitor the situation from afar, always wary of the lingering potential for manipulation. The ultimate fate of the alien species behind the Nightingale frequency remained unknown. Whether they had abandoned their attempts at subtle influence or were simply recalibrating their approach was a question that haunted the minds of many. The silence on the cosmic airwaves was deafening, leaving humanity to wonder if the faint, unsettling melody of Project Nightingale was truly over, or merely a lingering note in a symphony yet to be fully understood. The era of blissful ignorance was gone, replaced by a cautious awareness of the unseen forces that might be shaping their world. A subtle reminder that the greatest secrets are often hidden in plain sight, or perhaps in the very frequencies that surround us.